The president of the United States, I'm guessing, is calling a lot of people this morning. He's not happy. We haven't even mentioned the mail-in ballot component. That was a whole separate ruling as well. With regard to Lisa Cook, though, did the president just find the line? The Fed's simply different than any other agency?
Yeah, and if I wanted to, I could see both sides of this one. If I want to take the side of the court on this one, if you go back historically, and I've not read the opinion, I just got into town, but money supply has always been different. Congress always had the right to run the printing presses. That was their job. It was not an executive authority. So if the court looks at this and says, well, you know what, regulation is one thing, the FTC is another, my own CFPB is something else. Those are executive functions. The monetary policies of the country were always congressional authority. So maybe that's different, and maybe that was the basis for this decision. Now, I just heard something from your report that struck me as completely wrong, which is that monetary policy should not be subject to political influence.
How about that line?
Really?
That's from the Chief Justice.
Yeah, that scares the hell out of me.
Why?
Because everything should respond to political pressures in this country. So who's going to make ultimately, who does the Supreme Court think gets to make monetary policy? A bunch of people that we don't elect? That is really frightening to me. If it was Congress's right in the beginning under the Constitution, they're subject to political pressure. Why wouldn't we still have that? I worry about these decisions that say, well, there's certain things that are just bigger than politics. They're above politics. We have to make things, take them
knowing
away
that
from
elected
politics.
officials must confirm people for the Fed, so therefore...
Yeah, but that's fine. There's some political input there. Yeah. The terms maybe are subject to political pressure. But look, I dealt with this at the CFPB. It was created by Elizabeth Warren because she thought that consumer protection should be above politics. Once you start going down that road, think about all the things in our government that really should be above politics and really should be left to the professionals, left to the technocrats. That frightens me. So anyway, I think that sentence may come back to haunt conservatives 100 years from now.
Wow.
I still think this is probably the right decision.
If, in fact, it is found that Lisa Cook did commit mortgage fraud, does that line then keep her from being fired that day?
I don't know how it can be. If this is not, if this is different and it's based on the fact that it used to be originally in Congress, that again now it's apparently above politics, then what would be the justification for letting a president fire somebody? Why wouldn't an impeachment be the ordinary process to remove a person for those types of causes?
Fascinating.
Again, I think it's the right decision, but apparently, and don't get me wrong, if it comes, I'm not like some people in my party. Yeah. I recognize the fact I don't know everything about everything.
Okay.
So
fine.
I don't lecture the Pope on theology. I'm
right.
not going to lecture John Roberts on constitutionality.
Okay. This other ruling, though, says you can fire pretty much anybody else.
Yeah, and that's the right decision.
Yeah.
And Humphrey's executor was wrong when it was written 100 years ago, or 85, whatever it was. And I think it was Roberts who actually said that.
Have you long believed that? Is this something that's been knocking around your head?
Yeah, this whole idea that there's this group, this part of government in the executive branch, especially, that's not subject to the president, makes no sense. If we want the president to be the chief executive officer of the country, and that's the position, they should be able to hire, fire, do all the things that executives are supposed to do. There shouldn't be these independent agencies. I don't have my pocket constitution because I'm not that geeky anymore. I used to be. I would challenge anybody to show me where the branch of government called independent agencies is.
Yeah.
It's not there.
We don't have those. So is there like a Monday night massacre in the offing then, or there just aren't that many people he wants to fire anyway?
Yeah, look.
He's largely created the government he wants.
Let's step back and take maybe a more holistic view of this. I worry about the rise of populism. I really do, on both the left and the right. Yeah. And one of the reasons populism exists is that people keep voting and they don't see any difference. They vote left, left wins. We don't really go that far left. They vote right, right wins. We don't go over that far right. The government has not been responsive to the voters, in large part because of the structure of the government. I have no difficulty with elections having consequences. It's one of the reasons I don't like the filibuster rule in the Senate, but that's another story. Presidents should be able to hire and fire people in their executive branch in order to put their policies into place. That's what they got elected to do. You might not like it, especially if you're a Democrat now. You don't like it because it's Donald Trump. I certainly wouldn't have liked it from a policy standpoint under Biden, but it's the right way to run the country. So if there's a house cleaning, yeah, probably so. But if you put people in that want to put the Trump policies in place, and I've talked long times about the deep state and how real it is. Maybe this is sort of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow. The mail-in ballots ruling is significant. As long as it's postmarked by election, it can be counted after election day. So when the election is complete, I think were the words that were used here. What does this mean for the Save America Act or some of the other attempts the president's made to cut down on mail-in ballots.
Yeah, again, I think it's probably the right decision because traditionally we've allowed states to run their own elections in this country. Don't like it. Don't like the fact that it takes California 7.5 weeks to count or something absurd like that. But unless you have a federal law sitting on top of it, then I think it's probably the right decision. I still don't see a pathway for success for the SAVE Act. I don't really understand why. I know there's some complaints about it in terms of, I have my passport, you might have yours, a lot of folks don't.
Sure.
How do you really prove citizenship, especially on the day of an election, those types of things? I don't like things that discourage people from voting once and voting legally. So I like the bill generally, but everybody I talk to on the Hill says the votes simply aren't there for a variety of reasons, and that doesn't change if it's in budget reconciliation, if it's tied to funding, if it's tied to anything. I just don't see the pathway to success.
Well, you must be chuckling, or I don't know what you're doing, looking at what's you've got the floor held hostage by Anna Paulina Luna. You've got a Freedom Caucus. Chip Roy's not going to behave in this Rules Committee meeting today. Are we done? Is the store closed indefinitely here?
Oh, probably, but it was anyway. It's Joe. It's almost 4th of July
I understand,
weekend.
sure. But, okay, there was one bill that got out before they locked the doors.
What did I miss?
Well, this housing bill.
Oh, the housing bill.
Is he going to sign that?
Sure. I don't understand why he didn't sign it in the first place. And again, he didn't say he was going to veto it.
Right.
He said he wasn't going to sign it. So even if he does nothing for the next, 8 days now, it becomes law.
Yeah.
Look, there's parts of the bill I don't like. That's the nature of a compromise. I don't like the part that bans corporations from owning houses. I think that's a market distortion. But I also understand the price you have to pay to get a bill done. If I was going to be critical of my good friend Tim Scott, it was the language that he used when he says, houses are for people, not for corporations. That's populist demagoguery, and I really don't like it. If you come out and say, look, I don't like this as a policy, I think it distorts the market, but it's what we needed to do in order to get this larger package passed. That's the nature of compromise in Washington. That is a mature way to look at things. It doesn't sort of muddy the waters about what the role of corporations are. I worry about blaming corporations for our ills.
Well, a lot of our analysis here has found that this institutional ownership is really, we're really nibbling around the edges.
It is a nothing burger.
It doesn't really exist.
It is, and that's why it would be completely defensible to come out and say, look, it's not going to be that big a deal. It's not going to, but it was the price we had to pay to get all these other good policies.
Yeah.
People understand a compromise. We do it in our own families every single day.
Sure, yeah.
But look, it's a decent bill. There's like 45 different provisions that some of it could actually help a little bit. I don't think it's going to help much because it doesn't get to the real root cause, which is that towns and counties don't approve enough housing. But it's a good bill. I don't know why the president decided to sort of fight on this hill.
They had Stat Hall all dressed up.
I
the
know,
whole
I saw
signing
that.
ceremony.
Oh,
My
geez.
God. Last one, high-minded question from Mick Mulvaney.
Oh, my goodness. The other one's low-minded?
You mentioned, well, all this has been so far, right? You mentioned some of the bigger political themes that are happening here, and you were on the ground floor for the Tea Party.
Yeah.
You see what's happening, and the president calls them communists, socialist Democrats. We've got another contest in Colorado tomorrow that is really starting to bring this outside of Manhattan. If you look at Maine, if you look at Michigan, Colorado, and California, are we witnessing the birth of a new type of Tea Party on the left?
That's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
And you and I may have talked about this. The Democrats about 10 years behind us on this, in large part because of the tremendous leadership that Nancy Pelosi and along with her Barack Obama exercised over their parties. They had a lot more control over their party, and just naturally Democrats are better team players than Republicans. We're a little bit more individualistic on our side of the aisle. So we were a little bit ahead of them in sort of this Freedom Caucus evolution. They're just catching up. Their populist wing is now catching up. They're getting ready to go through their Donald Trump primary. Wait and see who runs in 2028, who's their Donald Trump, because I think you're going to see it. But the parties continue to fracture. It's probably not surprising. We're a country of 350 million people with only two parties. They were never going to be monolithic in the first place. Yeah, right. But if you want to see the way the Democrats going, go back and start studying the Republican Party starting about 2008, 2009, and you'll see the same, what is it, history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme?
Well, it's rhyming here. Yeah. It's just a question of whether this, in fact, continues to snowball around the country, or if it's something, as we mentioned, that's limited to downtown Manhattan.